Oh, I'm not gonna say
Hardjowirogo.
Hardjowirogo.
There you go.
Hardjowirogo.
Yeah.
Like a guy named Joey Rogo. Sorry.
And welcome to Pseudorandom.
This is Pseudorandom, and I am Collin Cunningham. Joining me today is Damon Hardjowirogo.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about music. Damon, you've made plenty of music in your day.
I have. And
you still make music.
I do still make music.
It's an important part of a healthy brain, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It definitely keeps me sane.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a certain type of music that is become dear to your heart.
Yes. So.
What would you call that?
8-bit music or chiptune is definitely where I found my roots in writing music.
So you said you found your roots in writing. So you started composing with chiptune?
Yeah.
As your instrumentation?
Yeah, exactly. So I used to play bass in middle school, and I kind of hated all the bands I played in and things like that. And I discovered 8-bit music around when I was 16, and the appealing thing to me was most people were doing it on Game Boy, so I was able to take it portably and not actually have to be good at an instrument. I was able to just write my ideas, not without being talented, but just on the go.
Pure composition.
Yeah, without the dexterity.
Super portable and on the go, yeah.
Yeah.
Long before, a lot of other options came up on the table. Now, so the first thing I think of is, so you started composing music like with a tracker, which is the common. I'm sort of jumping ahead here, but
It's okay.
But that's hard to me.
Yeah.
Using these sequencers
You
that are
know,
built in.
when it's the first thing you learn, you don't think about it. I had a bit of experience with GarageBand because that came to fruition while I was first had a computer of my own. But trackers are really, I would say, where I got my start. And trackers are definitely a unique software people aren't too familiar with outside of this scene.
Yeah, I used them, and I still don't feel like I ever got truly native with them. So, okay. But in order to properly orientify ourselves, the new one. How did chiptune emerge? I know people will associate it with 8-bit sound, video game noises. But where did this come from? How did this emerge into?
Well, that's
culture head.
We kind of start with video games, actually, just with hardware for video games, and these were the only sounds they were capable of making. Right.
So people who were making games were making music for games.
Exactly.
And they had a very limited palette.
Yeah.
Which is a key in a lot of ways, as I see it, to great creativity, great creative decisions.
Yeah. Incredibly limited.
Right. So incredibly limited. And working with what they had, they did some beautiful things.
Yeah, definitely.
And this inspires. This is, people grew up with this. People they associate this with good times and experiences. Basically, this is rooted in people's brain. When people see you play with a Game Boy, it has a certain more than wow factor, I would say.
Yeah, it was definitely, when this was my focus in music, working with 8-bit hardware, it was both a blessing and a curse because people were drawn to it like they probably wouldn't be drawn to a normal band per se.
Right.
I've seen a guitar a million times.
Or laptop music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you also have people who just start coming up to you oh, Mario, Tetris, and I'm just I don't know.
That's not what I'm playing here, actually, but
it comes from the same place,
cool.
but not what I care about right now.
Right, but they can relate
Exactly.
to you. They've stood with their hands like this before.
That was very charming at first, and then the more you did it, the more you yearned for no one to ever bring those two games up to you again.
Right, sure, yeah, I know. It's Mario and Tetris. I still remember the first time I saw the Game Boy in the live running Tetris, and see, it's imprinted on me.
Yep.
That was in Toys R Us glass display case. But, okay, so video games, and that's where this sort of music was first made in sort of on the other side, in the producers of the game world, the people who made that stuff, Nintendo. And then, but it started to people started authoring their own chiptune music.
Yeah, so
as well, they were using these sound chips? Like they figured out how to
Exactly.
program them themselves?
Basically, the next step you get after just actual companies hiring people to compose for their games, like Nintendo had a lot of internal composers for like their games working with like software we'll probably never see.
Right.
But as computers kind of became more common in the household or like egalitized a bit, people just wanted to see how far they could push the hardware, do everything they could with it. And you kind of go into what we call the demo scene, which is people just trying to literally push a computer graphically and like audibly, like as far as they can, just pushing the limits of what the hardware is capable of.
Demo scene. Now, these are we're calling them demos because they're demonstrations of what people can do with the hardware.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
We have we have video or some
Yeah,
sort of imagery.
We have a
media
little
support.
video of one of my favorite demos. That's by the music is by Firefox and Tip, and it's from the Phenomena crew. It's called the Enigma demo, and the demos are always really charming and fun to me because they literally have text in them that's just like, "Can you believe I did this with this computer?"
It's like straight up, it's like comments in code, like
Yeah.
but and it's wavy
Yeah.
and animated as it should be. Can we see one of those demos?
Yeah.
Just to refresh.
Yeah. So, like to us now, that's just like, what's the big deal? That's just
But
like a spinning cube, but that was like
massive amounts of work and experimentation and
so much work.
huge achievement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they evolved and they got much more elaborate. These were so you would just be like, "Hey, did you check that demo?" And you just like pass the file around.
Yeah.
Or-
I mean, early internet, there's definitely websites where people are uploading, like files that were huge at the time, maybe like 32 KB, and just passing around like, "Look what I did with this computer." And people in some of their homes would treat this kind of like a record player, just throw these on, dance in their rooms to them, be like just really like amazed by new digital art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great way to showcase it. Now, these were also showcased in some like software cracks, right? For like games that were
definitely.
passed around.
Yeah, so there's a lot
This
of
is
overlap
just-
between like demo sceners and software crackers. Actually, we have a photo of the logo of one of the biggest crews, Razor 1911. They're still pretty active. I think one of the biggest things people are like excited about them in the past few years actually was they cracked Skyrim.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
that'd be- so and they still probably use elaborate sound and
Yeah,
This
like the things that you get, like if not that you should, but if you've ever had a keygen
Right,
on
it's
your
culture,
computer, they always have like this 8-bit music because it's these same people doing it, the same people who are like
the
interested.
tradition has carried
Exactly.
really heavily.
Yeah.
So yeah, you would go and basically, you had just, I don't know, King's Quest or something, or I don't know. Anyway, and then yeah, I just want to try it out without limitations. So you open the software and just for like a moment, it's like and how
Yeah.
this.
It's so elaborate, but you're never going to have it open for more than 20 seconds,
Like-
unless you really like the song, in which case it's like a very funny thing to keep a keygen open just to hear a song.
Right, and then you're just getting a little window into culture, and it's like a gateway there.
Exactly.
Wow, I think that's a pretty cool association. It's a little strange to think. Do you think some people actually got into the scene just from seeing that stuff and be like, I want to be able to?
I mean, definitely. When there was just like less of this stuff around, like imagine how powerful that must have been. Just like, oh, let me download this like crack, and then all of a sudden it's just like, whoa, you can
This
do
stuff
this
looks
with this
better than the
computer.
game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm always reminded of when I talk about demo scene stuff. I'm always reminded of Blood Money, this game was it Commodore 64 or was it Amiga? I don't know. Blood money. There's a whole lot more coming. Very sample oriented, a little later than this early stuff that we're talking about. But anyway, the mind wanders.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what was the sort of next step from the demo scene?
Yeah.
Because now chiptune is, now it is.
It's almost ubiquitous.
Genre.
Yeah.
So it went from being this sort of really niche, really niche thing that not many people heard about, which then the author slaved over it and put a lot of heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
How did it move from there to becoming more of a accepted?
It definitely did. So as more demo parties, which were just giant
demo parties.
Yeah, they were literally just you'd fill an auditorium full of people working on they'd have 3 days and it was a competition. They still do these pretty often in a lot of parts of Europe. You just have to make the sickest thing you could in 3 days.
Like a game jam.
Proto game jam, essentially. From there, just people just had the means and were just making music on their own and sharing it online. And then there was kind of a yearning for these people to take it into a performative space. Because why not? It's music, and a lot of it's better than a lot of other music out there.
That's what happens when something is good that you're doing.
Exactly.
Do it more for more people and live if you can. Yeah.
Exactly. So kind of one of the biggest and most fruitful scenes was actually right here in New York City. Around 2006, you have these. You have Jeremiah Johnson, Null Sleep, and Joshua Davis, Bit Shifter, starting a label called 8-Bit Peoples. And running a festival called Blip Festival and a monthly show showcasing various chiptune artists called Pulse Wave that was run at the Tank.
I didn't know it was monthly. Okay.
Yeah, and what you get from this was it was actually more open and just community-like than most other music scenes in the city. The biggest thing of Pulse Wave was that there was 20 minutes open mic before every show.
Open mic.
Yeah, so people would open mic as in open aux cable, because you would just come plug in your Game Boy and play whatever songs you were working on. So that's kind of the roots of it really starting to be taken more seriously in a performative space.
Right.
Is right here.
And you performed.
Yes.
In these spaces.
I did.
What was the name of the band?
So my high school band was called Starscream. We stole it from Transformers, and then a band from Philadelphia sued us to change our name somehow. They spelled it with a K, and somehow they had a trademark on K.
Oh, okay.
But that's a different story for another time.
Yep. Bitterness understood, justified, and identified with. So, okay, now, as we mentioned in the beginning, say Game Boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is Game Boy the go-to chiptune instrument? Why is it such a loaded weapon in this battlefield?
Not only is it very capable, relative to most of the hardware, I'm not saying it's by any means the best or coolest, but the fact is,
I don't even think about anything else that's seen as comparative.
The fact is just that more people had Game Boys in their homes than they had Commodore 64s.
Very large install base, massive. Was it 200 million Game Boys out there, basic Game Boy compatible?
And just think about all the variations of it, and that were pretty much the same, just different sizes, etc.
And Nintendo's backward compatibility probably means that you can run your tracking software on the Game Boy Advance towards
and all those generations of essentially the same hardware.
Pocket.
Yeah, that just means you probably had one sitting around in your home, and when you hear about this music, you're like, oh, I could do that. I just need to go buy this cartridge that has the software on it so I can run it.
But not the Game Boy Micro? Depends on what
Nanoloop 2, Nanoloop 2.x.
Okay,
but
I love the Game Boy Micro.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. Okay, so I'm coming back to tracker software because I've tried using this. The most popular software is LSDJ, right? Little Sound DJ.
Yeah.
It's a grid, right? Do you want to talk about that now? Do you want to talk about tracking?
No, let's talk about trackers.
Let's talk about trackers. We're here. Let's do it. It's a grid with hex values, basically. Usually?
Usually.
I've seen it with hex values.
Trackers vary from tracker to tracker, but the main difference...
As trackers do.
in trackers versus what most people are used to in a digital audio workstation is that they run vertically for the most part and not horizontally. And for the most part, you just have blocks, just like numbers that represent a pattern you've written. So it's not like where you just have a region in Ableton that has your MIDI notes and you can copy paste that. It's just like the number 01 represents this string of music notes I've put together, and I can put 01 as many times in the song as I want, and it'll play back that exact pattern.
01 represents where's that is tied. 01 is tied to a definition of a pattern you've defined elsewhere.
That you define, yeah.
Okay.
So we can take a look.
Yeah, let's take a look. That would make a lot of sense.
So I'm gonna plug in here. We can go to
And
the
so
overhead
this
camera.
is software that was written to control hardware, sound hardware. How can I say it? Like to interface with a sound chip.
Exactly.
Because this, like the Commodore 64, the Game Boy, that has a sound chip. It's like a hardware synthesizer.
Yeah. And each piece of hardware has its own unique characteristics with its sound chip. A lot of people love the Commodore 64's SID chip because like it makes beautiful saw waves, whereas the Game Boy is most known for its square waves, the more like bleepy bloopy sounds that people are like actually most associate with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the SID chip was like totally. It was like a kind of revolutionary. Designed by someone who knew about music composition.
Who actually went on to develop Ensoniq. Yeah, so the same designer created the ESQ1, which is one of my favorite synths. So that was very fun to find out this one guy had so much impact in my home.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so this was designed, like I said, for the ground. This was designed for. This is the big paradigm difference here. I'm just trying to say is like hardware. Like sound hardware, sound chip. Like nowadays, it's like we use software, and it's like those CPUs fast enough. We don't need to. But when we had to have dedicated hardware for sound, that was a lot of capability was added, and a lot of great new things we could do. But still, you had this limited palette that was defined.
Exactly.
Okay. This is the big, limited palette, creative resourcefulness employed, necessary for humans.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
so the tracker.
So let's take a look at it. So LSDJ isn't necessarily the most traditional tracker, but the way I always described it to people was imagine each of these numbers is a different folder on your computer.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at this one that says 08, I'll go into it, and that has that's a chain of these patterns, of these phrases rather.
All right, and then you have notes inside.
Exactly. So inside of each of these phrases are the actual notes. So if I play this, I've made like the best like kick drum sound you can with a square wave, which is just the speaker turned off. We'll be there in a second.
That's just the sound of the speaker turning on.
Yeah. So there, these C5 notes are just representing this kick drum sound I've made. And then if I go over, let's say into this one that says 20, I have these other patterns with other sounds I've designed. So essentially I zoom back out, you look at this, and these are all just the folders of different patterns of notes playing in harmony.
Okay. All right, so it's nested patterns.
Exactly.
I get it. And these, can you use samples on that list?
Yeah, you actually can. That was one of the things people had the most fun with. I actually, in this song I've loaded up, have a custom sample I made.
Because right now it's like, it's using...
Yeah.
Okay.
So LSDJ by default comes with like 808 samples and other like Lindrum, other like classic machine drum, just samples. But the most fun that people had with it was just cutting up your own things, because that was really something you could put into the software that no one else had access to. Right. So this was one. This is actually like a cover I did of a Proxyon song. It's like famous like Italo disco artist that I was really obsessed with, and I just like cut this in. Yeah.
Let's go.
Here, I'll play that a little louder.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun,
you can go a lot of places with that. And that doesn't, that's a very small sample.
Exactly. But yeah, a lot of people even got to the point with this software where they're just trying to just use it as a sampler, just cutting up all their own things, chopping up just like people would for like hip hop beats with an MPC or something, just writing full hip hop beats in here.
And those are, you've got a lot of space limitations depending on the hardware that you use, and that hardware is basically was, at least early days, was like game, again, we see piracy come into play. What is it? What is the chiptune piracy comes in? But these were designed for people to load ROMs
Exactly.
on
Yeah.
and,
These,
and play their home copies of their personal game collection
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, exactly. These, I can show it off in this overhead camera a bit. It's actually, I'll show it here.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. These blue cartridges, sorry, I'll zoom out a bit.
That's good.
These were Chinese cartridges from a company called EMS. And this is basically what everyone had. It was actually the only option, and you would have to get this really complicated setup for flashing anything to it. But they originally were there just so companies or just people could sell
Right.
like pirated cartridges just full of like every game ever,
Right.
because this had so much more memory on the cartridge than your standard.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then people found something even better to do with it.
Exactly.
Basically. Right.
Yeah.
So, and you can also use LSDJ with an external controller?
Yeah, you can. So I'll set that up. One of the most like fun features was that, and not too many people use this actually.
So this is so you can go, yeah, we can go full. So this isn't that tracker, and that's not
Yeah.
the Game Boy that's under the camera now. This is another one.
Yeah, so that's this one here. Yeah, you could literally plug in a PC keyboard if you had chopped up a link cable to go
Right.
to the PS2 end, and then you could literally just
Okay, so this is a PS2 to here. Look, can we see that?
Yeah, totally.
He's actually using a PS2 keyboard.
Yep.
This is a nice little old IBM rubber dome.
Yeah.
Now, onto this hacked link cable, which is made for Game Boy multiplayer
Exactly.
capabilities. So PS2 to link cable adapter, and now
Yep.
this is.
Yep.
So can you turn that up just a little bit?
Yeah.
'Cause I need to feel. I need to feel the
Go
bits.
for it. I think that's about as loud as we're getting, but yeah. Yeah, and
Good.
people.
That's what, of course, what I would need to do.
Yeah.
Like I need to have external control, and then I want to convert. Now I'm gonna have to figure a way to convert my control voltage signal to PS2.
Exactly. There's actually.
That
Yeah.
doesn't
This
sound
was
actually like
this was definitely actually a more like gimmicky implementation of external
Right.
control on
Right, 'cause it's a
8-bit
bit
hardware.
laggy. It's
a
got
little bit
some
laggy,
latency.
but there's actually guy out in California named Tim Lamb performs as Trash 80, puts out music as Trash 80 as well. He has really pushed the envelope with this hardware and has developed a lot of like MIDI sync capabilities, so you can use any sequencer with the Game Boy, and it's really impressive. And I admire his dedication to like, pushing the hardware envelope while still working within this limited sound palette.
I really like the idea of using just this one module, like Game Boy,
Yeah.
Game Boy, instead of this infinite amount of external hardware and
Yeah.
all these permutations.
That was,
and this
a
kind
lot of
stuff.
people had that ethos while the scene was like at its largest. They were just like limitations force creativity, and there's like definitely an extent to which that's very much true. Like I go back to a lot of these songs and I'm just like, wow, I don't write like this at all anymore because I'm like
Right.
so unlimited.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to not have limitations.
It is. You find a balance. Is there one original writer of LSDJ?
Yeah, so his name's Johan Kutlinsky.
Okay.
He still updates it all the time based on like kind of like community requests for features.
Oh, wow, he still does.
Yeah, there's constantly updates. The nice thing about these cartridges is that they're rewritable, so you just, flash the new version of the software whenever he puts an update.
Right.
You don't have to buy an actual
Yeah.
new hardware each
New
time.
cartridge.
Yeah.
And we spoke a little bit before the show, and you mentioned he ended up working at Teenage Engineering.
Yeah, so
on the-
Johan, I don't believe he stayed there, but the OP1, which was Teenage Engineering's big,
I love the
it's
OP1.
beautiful little synth. He designed one of the like secret programs on there.
Oh, okay, the Easter egg program.
Yeah, exactly.
And what a common thread here I see is the OP1 seems designed around the principle of a relatively limited palette or limited tool palette.
Yeah, in
some
addition to the
ways.
same portability.
Right, yeah.
They're both just as easy to throw in a bag,
Right.
and then you can just plug into a sound system, but put on a legit show.
Right. Would you mind playing? Is there a sequence you can play off of LSDJ?
Yeah.
Do you have one?
I have one
loaded
loaded up
that you'd like to?
Yes. So this is, as I mentioned, this is that cover I did of the Proxyon song.
Hey. And there's live controls you can.
Yeah. So if we take a look, there's fun things you can do. Like if I'm highlighting this channel, I can mute a solo of it. Yeah. You can mute it.
You can do some major drops with this. You
Yeah.
can drop the bass.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
even in that aspect, it's a bit limited
Hands in
for
the
what
air.
you can actually do with it. But
That's about. I don't know,
but it was
what else
fun.
do you need?
it used to just be me and a drummer, and I would just like look at him every time I was about to like
that-
solo something, and he would stop. You know, it was just like about our chemistry.
And I could feel the rush just hearing that channel come back in right there. So that's
Yeah, exactly.
all we really need as humans to get excited, I think.
Yeah. I'll fade this out.
You brought a lot of cool toys. You did bring one other that I don't want us to miss.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should talk
Come on,
about this
come
one.
This is.
So this is the.
You can put it. Well, actually, you have to move the camera.
Yeah.
A bit.
Here, I'll hand you the
go for
box.
that.
You should hold this up.
I'll hold this up, and then you can put it on the overhead.
Cool.
I mean the camera.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
So this is the BeeGees rhythm machine.
the
This-
BeeGees rhythm.
The
machine.
BeeGees, the actual BeeGees. This was just
BeeGees,
like,
known for their sound synthesis
look at this
and
beautiful
exploration
logo.
of sound.
Wow.
You can
this,
move that, back it out a bit and show the
Yeah,
lovely
let's-
detailing styling of the front control panel of the BeeGees rhythm machine
Yeah. So
by Mattel.
very, very, very limited synth, just like what we've been talking about with the 8-bit hardware. We actually haven't opened this up and actually taken a look at what's in it yet, but
We haven't.
we will someday.
We will. All right, yeah. We'll wait. Maybe for circuit bending show.
Yeah, but this is this.
Synth is actually made famous because it was used on Kraftwerk's pocket calculator.
You told me this, and I'm like, what? I mean, because it's not like I would put it past Kraftwerk to use like a toy. I mean, Stylophone was by Bowie and Space Oddity and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I was surprised. But it's real. It's true. Can you prove it to us?
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm the operator of my pocket calculator. It's true. They did. And why not? It sounds beautiful.
Yeah, and it fit in with the
Kraftwerk ethos, where they were trying to all have handheld instruments that were electronic.
Right? Yeah. It worked. Yep. There was no giant machine in front of
Yeah.
them, and they used what was available to them. I like the BeeGees Rhythm Machine electronic music synthesizer. It also has built-in beats and stuff like that too, which is of course.
Yeah, it's just coming out of this
it's
speaker.
just coming out of the little
Yeah.
speaker. It's the actual key sound is much more impressive. That's just good background. We could just leave that going.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. That was cool. Is there any other examples we wanted to show the fine people of the internet?
From LSDJ?
Well, yeah.
Or from, yeah, I mean, actually, why don't we take a look at some of the other images we brought up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
so it was definitely, the scene wasn't limited to working with Game Boys. I have some images of Synth Cart. And this is I believe this is Nerd Tracker. This was actually a PC-based tracker.
Okay,
So you'd
yep.
write on your PC, but it was emulating the NES sound chip.
Okay, this is emulating the chip and software, and this is
Yeah.
the tracker interface.
Exactly. So there weren't cartridges as readily accessible as there are for the Game Boy, where you can just write your own like programs and everything to. So most people worked within the PC environment, and then they would export the files to. You'd have to like EEPROM, like flash onto your own NES cartridge, and then that's how you could actually get playback from the actual hardware.
Okay.
So it was a much more elaborate setup. That's what you have happening
Yeah.
in the early days of our friend's band Anamanaguchi. But you know, everything is it was even less reliable than traveling with the Game Boy because
Right.
you have the big NES that you have to take care of.
Right. NES that you have to take. You have to just every
Yeah.
now and then just
Yeah.
blow in it, so or else it'll.
But just with the growth
disintegrate.
of the scene, you actually see the growth of a lot of hardware, and somebody eventually came out with a cartridge that had a compact flash slot. So you could just write to a compact flash card
Nice.
from your computer and load up
Right.
that really
Big-
easily.
Big cartridge, I'd imagine. Fit
It
a
was
compact
like normal NES cartridge size, actually.
Oh,
and then-
NES, right? I
Yeah.
keep thinking GB. Right.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be huge.
Right. Yes. Okay.
But then, yeah, we can take a look at, I think the next image we have, the synth cart. Oh, no, this is Milky Tracker. This is another great tracker. Actually, this is similar to the environment a lot of the like demo scene people would mainly be working in.
Okay.
The trackers that you would find for like
Compose
Amiga,
here.
Commodore 64, et cetera. It's more similar to those. They're actually very robust, and you can just import samples to these and use them as much as you would a DAW, but there's just like settings you can put on to basically say, all right, work only as if you're an Amiga, which means you have 4 channels, one of them's hard
Tighten
tab
the
left.
screws.
Yeah.
Hold me
one of
down.
them-
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this one's really fun. I worked with that for a while once I moved on from LSDJ. But actually, the next thing, yeah, this was so this was a keyboard overlay for the Commodore 64.
That was official. That's
Yeah.
not just like a hack or a mod.
No, this wasn't like a homemade thing. People sold this.
I had that.
It was
yeah,
Learn
when I was a
Piano
kid.
on your Commodore 64 because
And
no one
it's-
had a piano, I guess.
and it was a nice solution. It actually,
I mean, it's
worked.
it's a hilarious thing because it's literally just like floppy plastic keys hitting
Yep.
other
Yeah, it's not like
keys.
some elaborate spring, hammer thing
No,
or anything going on. It's just plastic on plastic.
But I used to
contact.
use this for software for the Commodore 64 called SynthCart that was developed by a guy named Paul Slocum. And what SynthCart was this. It basically was just like a visual and audio generator when you didn't need the graphical interface to use it at all. Your bottom row of keys was just like however many presets. You could go into the software and edit hex values to make your own sounds, but it was designed to work without needing to see it. But if you had it plugged in, you got these pretty visuals
I was
playing
going to
along.
say it seems worth seeing.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, I used to use this a lot, like through guitar pedals and stuff, and it was noisy and like it's an old computer and would crash a lot.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's incompatible. We could deal with some, little real-time errors, but
Yeah.
showstoppers. That's the danger.
Yeah.
We
There are plenty of times where I just should have been playing, but I was
All right.
trying to restart the computer.
As long as the crowd's native, they're cool with it.
Yeah. Paul Slocum's done a bunch of other fun things that people might know on the iPhone, like Sir Sampleton, which is just like a
his
piano roll you record your voice into and can play it back at different pitches.
Oh, right. I didn't see that one. I know his name though, definitely. So, but you, to switch gears here, you also, you brought some footage of Starscream, your band.
Yeah, so
Playing.
we can take a look at that.
We could. I think we could play out to that.
Yeah, so this is my band. We're called Infinity Shred now. We used to be called Starscream. This is us playing at Blip Festival 2011 at iBeam in Chelsea. And enjoy.
Thank you for that.